You're listening to the Spirit Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Spirit. I'm Beck.
And I'm Steph.
Hi, Steph.
How you doing, Beck?
Good. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was pretty good.
Yeah?
Spent it with Rick and Gabby and the other Rick.
I don't know if anyone out there knows who Rick and Gabby and the other Rick are, but
My sister, her husband, which is...
just in case you want to do some stalking,
Yep.
we'll give you the address.
Oh, God. You really don't want to show up there.
We're actually here with Rick. Would this be Rick Jr.?
This is actually Richard III.
Okay.
King Richard III.
Yes.
King Richard III is our favorite guest. He likes to pop in
And spew paranoid garbage.
and yes, it's just... He's got that buttery voice that women love. Believe me, we've
God.
had
Do?
yeah, we've had feedback. You should be thankful for that.
Told your mom about it on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
All the ladies, they want pictures too. Like, well, do you have pictures of this Ricky guy?
Oh. Ladies, just whatever's in your mind is where it should stay. That's probably... I have a face made for radio. That's why I'm here.
Oh, stop it. This Thanksgiving, there was a huge ordeal about a monolith. Did you guys see that?
Yes, I did. Here's the thing, everybody out there. I'm probably a paranoid schizophrenic. So if the mainstream news comes out with it, I look at it enough to see what is going on, sort of. But then I turn it off and I try to do my own research. So all I know is 2001: A Space Odyssey opening
Yep.
credits happen in
Yep.
the desert somewhere.
Exactly.
I haven't looked it up yet.
Well, that's pretty much, you hit it. It was in the Utah desert, fashioned up against a nice set of boulders. And it did look very 2001 Space Odyssey. A lot of people were using comparisons for that. However, it may not be that mysterious. There were people, they were telling people not to, you tell people not to go somewhere, they're going to go.
Yeah.
That it was,
What's that noise?
that's the aliens. They're trying to get in now.
Oh,
We heard them.
they've arrived.
Oh, the dogs
they are
have
here.
forced their way into the room.
Oh,
Hi,
my
puppies.
Lord. Oh, my Lord. You can't be part of this.
They will not be denied.
All right, I guess so. Where was I? We left off.
With people will go there.
Yeah, they tell people not to go there. They're going to go there. Don't look at the car crash. You're going to look at the car crash, right? Well, maybe it's a good thing because people did go in and they did find rivets. It was an artist installation or something of the like.
Yeah, they even saw the cuts in the rock.
Yes.
Well, yeah, but another one of our topics today is also man-made, and that is nonetheless creepy and serves a purpose. So, yeah, was it made by aliens? I guess not.
No.
But, I mean, I think it could also come to symbolize something else. You know?
It could.
When you see how people react to it, it shows how our society's thinking in the moment, too. Like,
Well, 2020.
I know. Well, there's so many weird things that have happened. Like, when did the crop circles start? How long ago was that?
That's been a while.
Yeah, 1960s or 70s,
It was the
I think.
60s? I'm thinking it was
In the
the
beginning,
90s. I thought it was the 90s.
It really got out of control in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But some of those were proven to be false, for sure.
Yeah.
But some are pretty darn
Elaborate.
yeah, they're elaborate. I remember watching a show where these kids from some really awesome college, real smart, decided to do one themselves. They had a hard time getting just simple designs done in one night. Mm-hmm. And so when you see the elaborate ones that are done just overnight, just appear, it's very impressive. I don't think it's impossible that people can't do it, but it showed that they had a group of college students do it, and they really planned it out well. Even added some of the things that they were finding at these sites, like little shavings of metal that they would find. So they decided to make a machine that could sprinkle these little metal shavings around just to show that we're going to do everything that we're finding. So they were able to accomplish it, but it was just not a very interesting looking one.
That sounds like a Rube Goldberg machine approach to doing a study. It's almost like we're going to create a machine.
What was a
to
TV show?
synthesize. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's just yeah. I think with those, a lot of people think now it was like bored farmers and kids playing pranks, but I think there's a lot of things that at times accompany those, like cattle mutilations. It's like,
Yeah.
have they ever done
That's terrible.
like they always like to say it's like yeah, cattle dies and then it's like gas escaping the body, but it's like, how come it's proven that like most of the time the flesh on these things is literally carved. It's not
Precision cut, like
Yeah.
laser cut.
I don't necessarily go to aliens. I think it could very well be just people out there.
Okay, yeah. I mean, there's definitely a mixture between both, but some of those mutilations that have bloodlessness, like there's absolutely no blood. It's
Yeah.
just too much.
And not only that, but once they started to quote unquote debunk those things, they always pointed fingers at like the farmers who like whose land it was. And it's like their life usually became hell after that was discovered, you know, after they discovered a crop circle or
It's
something.
true.
It's like, why would they like, yes, that what does the attention get them? It gets them like mocked in media and it damages their crops, damages their business. It's not like it serves them any purpose. Then they got to deal with crazy spectators and the FBI trouncing through their
Yep.
land for like
Media.
years afterwards. Like
Yep.
to me, I don't think it was the work of people seeking attention for themselves. I think it was definitely other people.
Like the
or
Skinwalker
other-
Ranch is like that. They wanted to have a great working ranch where they were going to raise cattle and all that. And then that place was a nightmare.
Right.
And
Yeah.
they had to leave. They just had to basically try to sell it to the next person.
What's interesting about this monolith, though, it was on government land. And that is against the law to be leaving installation pieces like that.
I wonder if it was a leftover set piece from the movie version of Hair. Like, you know.
The dawning.
Yeah. Like when they filmed that scene, that was part of it, but then it wound its way onto the cutting room floor. Like, because people leave set pieces and crap behind all the time. Like, I remember a couple of years ago, a young girl in England on a walk with her father found like a Dalek in a pond. And it was from a 1980s episode of Doctor Who. Or another kid that same year, I think, found a sword that looked like something King Arthur would wield. And it was like, no, BBC was filming some sort of TV show or something. And some idiot just at the end of filming chucked it in the water.
Talking about weird monoliths and stones and things that come out of nowhere. What do you guys know about the Georgia Guidestones?
Well, they were erected in 1980 by a professional company. But the thing is, it was the brainchild of a guy by the name of, I think it was R.C. Christian, which is obviously a fake name.
Yeah.
And he approached some granite carving company to make, you know, this elaborate design. And they thought he was so full of it that they quoted him something like 4 or 5 times above what they would normally charge for a project of that size. And without even hesitating, he just said, you know, yeah, I'll go right ahead. I'll pay you whatever you want. He said he represented a community of people that for like 20 years they had been planning this. Once again, a weird, mysterious group represented by him bought the farmland that it was placed on. Basically, they built this thing and then they never returned. Apparently, there was plans of or at least as far as we know, for all we know, that farmer who still owns all the land around it just lets him and his buddies sneak onto it in the middle of the night and do God knows what there. But you know, there was supposed to be a time capsule, but doesn't look like the part of it where they were going to inscribe the dates was ever done, and so they don't know if anything was actually buried underneath it. It's basically,
It's the inscriptions that are the
Yeah.
spooky part.
The sandblaster charged with carving each of the 4,000 plus characters on the stones, which, by the way, they were in like 8 languages.
Yep.
During the hundreds of hours he spent etching the guides, he had been constantly distracted by strange music and disjointed voices.
I believe it.
That's really weird.
I believe it.
When I was trying to read more about it, I did not come across that. So that's really quite frightening.
Yeah. I want to say over the years too, when people have gone out there, there's always been a certain handful of people that experience strange things like disembodied voices and tricks of the sun, they say, like, you know, all sorts of weird things.
There's been rituals,
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's
graffiti.
I know there was graffiti.
I think it's on a ley line too. I think that's why
Yeah,
they bought
everything
that
is
land.
ordered towards like the
Yeah.
sun, the stars.
Yes.
Everything is lined up, which makes you think, you know, who are these people? They kind of remind me of maybe Masons or some sort of thing like that because they kind of have that in their belief system. They are very interested in those type of things.
It could be. I have my own belief though. about the Masons. I think a lot of what's said about them and their actual goals is probably true. But I think a lot of mysterious organizations, they like to think that they're running the show or contributing to it. Mm-hmm. But really, I think the majority of the world is actually controlled by 1 to maybe 12 people that we've never heard the name of. And all of these people think they're in on it. But at the end of the day, if they have to be sacrificed for the cause of the true people behind it, they will. They'll never be one of them. They'll never be safe.
They're
just like we're
patsies.
never safe. Yeah, they're patsies.
Mm-hmm.
This RC Christian guy, he probably thinks he's ushering in something great, but he's probably dead now. And I doubt...
He is, actually. The one person who knew who he was that Granite
Did
guy.
he die of a heart attack or in an accident?
It didn't say. But this guy that knows who this RC Christian is will not reveal it. Even on his deathbed, he refuses because he wants the mystery to live on.
Which is kind of cool.
I guess, except for the fact of, well, like you said, let's go back to what's on those stones.
You want me to read them?
Yeah.
Okay. Maintain humanity under 500,000 in perpetual balance with nature. So
Eugenics.
Yeah, it's the idea of keeping the population down so everything, I guess, functions better on the planet.
When 500,000, though.
It's not a lot.
How many billions are now on the planet?
Almost 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. It's very bizarre. You
Yeah.
know, unite humanity with a living new language.
Okay. Even though they used 8 different languages or possibly more on the stones. What is this? Am I interpreting that incorrectly?
I know what that really means. They're not even talking about
A literal language?
No, they're talking about the law, make the law living. Adjust it to expedient needs. At least that's what I get out of it. Because if you can bend the law, then you can continue to control everything. If laws aren't set in stone, like these are guidelines. They are not laws. These are the blueprint for the world that you want to make.
Okay.
Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts, which is
That
a good
makes
one.
sense, yeah.
Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court.
I.e.
That sounds like one world.
Well, yes, but we already have it on continents. We have the European Union. We have, well, sort of. It's always been kind of in limbo, but like stuff like NAFTA. Well, really, even the United Nations. I mean, right now, during the election time, they talked about if we had all sorts of madness and hysteria over the election, right before it occurred, that people like Pelosi were going to ask them to step in and arbitrate the election. Or in Europe, your government is not your own. You elect your officials. But then they answer to a governing body that is not elected, and they tell your governing body what to do. Sorry, I didn't mean to get off track.
No, that's okay.
I think it's relevant. Number 7's avoid petty laws and useless officials. That's not a bad one either. Balance personal rights with social duties. That kind of sounds like
Socialism.
social duties, like
Give your life for the state. I don't think most people want it.
No.
Most people either think they want
They
it,
think they want it.
or dead people voted for it.
prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite.
That sounds great and all, except for the whole wipe everybody out but 500,000. We
know.
can't just gloss past that main one.
I'm always telling people, too, the ones that are like, we need to get our population down. Like, why don't you volunteer yourself and be the first one? Because when it comes down to it,
They never think it's going to be them.
Yeah, they never think it's going to be them. It's always this group of people.
I bet if we looked up the number of people in the world who possessed, like, say, $500 million and more, right? It's probably somewhere around 300,000. And I'm talking about like the whole world over. Obviously there's not that many in like the United States or whatever.
Right.
Or maybe there's like 100,000, right? But then they need slaves. And that is the rest. And they will be genetically modified. By the way, folks, this was stuff that I had professors scream at me in college about, and I used to get in arguments over. They talked all about engineering another race, how, our children can all have blonde hair and blue eyes. If that doesn't freak anybody out, I don't want to talk. If it doesn't freak you out, I don't want to talk to you. And they do it under this guise of, well, yeah, but then we can eliminate things like Down syndrome and childhood defects, and allergies to certain things, deadly allergies to certain things. And okay, but that's no longer your child, really, because its DNA and RNA has to be altered. So it's not 100% you. I mean, if you took an ancestry test, it would probably really confuse it. We aren't meant to muck with these things. Look at, we've been doing it to our food for decades, and we're all getting sicker. Everybody's getting Alzheimer's. When people die now, you have to be put in caskets that are very, very different from how they used to be. Before, they could just stack some plywood together and bury you. They cannot do that now because your body is filled with so many metals and chemicals that you will poison the soil with your corpse.
We just went real dark.
Yeah, I know, but it's the truth. It is the truth. And this comes from what they put in our food, because how else is it getting into your body? Now, listen, I could talk vaccines all day, but I know I'm going to piss off a certain amount of your audience. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I think early on inoculations and vaccinations were very helpful. But if you think what's going into your body now is there to help you, there's a lot of people in India and Africa that would like to have a conversation with you.
Last one.
Okay. Steph's like,
sorry,
back
this
to
is
the
kind
guidestones.
of my thing.
Yeah. Be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature.
It sounds good, though, right?
It does
It
sound
does sound
good.
It sounds awesome.
It sounds very...
And that's how they get you.
It seems like the focus is on man. I don't want to call it nature worship or anything. If you look at the Christian ideas, it's God first. But this is, I think, man first, God second. So they're just how I see it. But
Well, that's exactly what it is. Steph.
Cultish, yeah.
It really, and I'm just talking about the culture war of things, okay? I'm just talking about what society over time started to deem cool, really started with the age of romanticism in poetry and in literature. Listen, if you like Lord Byron, I'm sure you shop at Hot Topic. All props to the guy for going to Greece with these ideas of revolution and dying for it. The guy walked what he talked. I'll give him that. And I know I'm getting off track, but there was a lot of people like him, spoiled, hedonistic people that really their poetry was not impressive for me. Anyways, some of it was good. Some of it was good. It's mainly the earlier ones, but people like him that engaged in out of sheer contrarianism in a lot of ways to normal society. They experimented with swinging, debauchery, and they came up with a lot of unique ideas. They inspired a lot of people, but that was really when I think subversion of Western culture began. And I think it grew out of control to the point where later on, like you had Emily Dickinson, and a lot of people love her. And actually, I really do enjoy her poetry. But somebody who on the surface wrote so much about God and Puritanism and everything, she was very much like, no, she would tell you, I'm a pagan, and I worship nature, and God is secondary. And that's how it begins, right? It begins with this sort of agnosticistic blurring of the lines. And then over time, you flash forward to today, and I know I'm skipping a lot of stuff, and to some people I probably sound crazy, but you skip forward to today, and it's now the idea of cultural relativism. Everything is relative. Just like that living law thing I was talking about, cultural norms. If you can shift them and mold them and shape them and immediately turn one thing that was a cultural norm, now, make everyone consider it evil, like they're doing in a lot
Cancel
of things
culture.
today. Yeah. Within 5 years, you can turn a cultural trait into something that people can fear. It's the same effect as it would have on the law. You can bend and mold people into thinking how you want them to think. And cultural relativism is very dangerous, and I would say it was the overall aim of a lot of the stuff I was talking about. And we tend to ignore it today. But I think that's a big part of what the Georgia Guidestones are talking about. They want us to be lifeless, shapeless, formless, because then we can be molded, and then there will be a significant portion of people, mark my words, 10 years from now, that will voluntarily go to the gas chamber.
You think people will voluntarily go to the gas chamber?
Or, firing range, whatever you want to call it. Yes, I honestly do. There's actually a movement of people that's already around that's all for it. They don't want to themselves be killed because they're still a little bit afraid. But they actively refuse to reproduce. They try to spread literature about the subject. This idea of humanity as a cancer came from the Romantic movement. It really did, because it started to talk about nature and talk about man creeping in. Listen, we can talk about that all day. I think in a lot of ways it was so successful because, at the time they were right. We were just tearing things down, the natural world apart. But we're different now. We've come a long way. I'm not saying we don't have a longer way to go, but there's a lot of people that can never be convinced that humanity isn't a cancer. And the be not the cancer, it's exactly what they're talking about. They only want people who will go along with whatever they say. And eventually you'll get to the point of being a brainwashed, soulless husk that will kill yourself if the state asks you to.
Let's transition that. I just happened to this year stumble on this when Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, do you know who they are? Mm-mm. They were in Shaun of the Dead.
Okay.
Well, Simon Pegg did a new series called Truth Seekers, and it's a paranormal show. It's over in England. And he was a paranormal investigator that constantly had this ham radio in his truck. He actually worked for a Wi-Fi company. In between his jobs, he would be listening to this ham radio that would be spitting numbers out, sequences of numbers. Mm. And it was the same numbers over and over and over.
Nobody fully knows the purposes of them, but people have speculated. I mean, first of all, let's go on what is probably true is the fact that they're military based. The earliest ones date back to World War I. Really, there was an explosion of them post World War II and going into the Cold War. And that was also when, obviously, we forget about it now, but ham radios were a big thing for a time here in America. Mm-hmm. And a lot of amateur operators started picking up on these stations, and each one, now they call them number stations, but some of them will have people saying a message or music. Nobody knows their purpose.
It's a one-way traffic, too. The
Yes.
transmitters broadcast numbers through the recipient. The recipient doesn't reply.
Yes.
So you have that. If they were doing it using a computer, that could be traced. Paper, you could probably burn. But these coded radio transmissions, they have encrypted data, so it's perfect.
Yes, and most importantly, a lot of these stations will put out the same broadcast continually for years and years and years and years and years. And it could be something that's 3 seconds long. It could be something that's, 10 minutes, but it'll be the same message over and over again. And then they tend to change or shut down right before insane events. I was talking to Steph a couple of days ago, and right before, I don't know how many people out there remember this, but, the Russian coup in 1991, right before then, some of them changed what they were broadcasting, almost like it was giving the green light to something. Another one shut down, the Lincolnshire Poacher, which, by the way, is the one used in Truth Seekers. That one shut down right at the crash of 2008. So each one, I mean, personally, this is just me. I don't have anything to back it up. But I personally think each one of them has a responsibility. And they're only meant to be picked up on by, obviously, the people who are meant to respond to them. I mean, think about this, okay? Here in America, where it took off the most back then, people probably don't remember, but there were several different governing bodies. In fact, we had the establishment of our, what's it called? Is it not the FAA, the Radio Council, whatever it's called. I can't, sorry guys, my memory fails me.
I'm trying to...
But we had so many different governing bodies fighting the ownership of ham radios. The government literally tried to make them illegal. And nobody could figure out, they were saying it was messing with air traffic control and all these other, but they did the same thing with pirate radio stations, and they don't.
No, there's different frequencies they're operating on.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I mean, a pilot is operating at a completely different frequency than a ham radio.
Exactly. And that's the thing. And So I think they were really trying to stop people looking into these things. I honestly think that what the message that you're hearing, the repeated message over and over and over again, that's almost like an everything's okay alarm, if anyone watches The Simpsons. And so it's meant to continually go, but the moment it goes silent, then I think those are probably stations that had a singular purpose, like, okay, crash the economy. And then ones that change their message, I think those work in stages. They're sort of, each message means a different thing when they change it.
There's something paranormal about it, too, because there are forums and Reddit threads and people that are still sitting down. There's hundreds of these channels, and they're still listening to these encoded messages, whatever they may be.
They're the real heroes.
And
by
they're
the way.
they're just trying to figure it out. They're coded radio transmissions. They think they have encrypted data. So they're sitting there listening to this over and over and over. And sometimes they claim they hear voices in the background that are different. I mean, it's like you'll have that message, but you'll have people talking behind that. Sometimes they'll switch channels. Sometimes one message will go from one transmission channel to another completely different channel and continue and pick up from there.
Kind of reminds me of the TV series Lost. Remember that number thing? Do you remember the show?
Yeah.
I think it was based on that
Really?
concept, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then they had to punch in the code every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they didn't do it, they were trying to figure if they didn't do it,
What would happen? Yep.
But
Yeah.
that was constantly going on a
We
relay.
should give our listeners an idea of what we're even speaking about. So,
Yeah, why don't we play a few clips?
all right, which one should we play
Well,
first?
why don't we start off with the Lincolnshire Poacher, because most people might be familiar with that, or they can turn around and watch the Truth Seekers, and then, they can hear it for themselves. I thought that was a pretty cool idea. I mean, they used a defunct station in it, maybe because, the BBC didn't want to get in trouble. This station no longer broadcasts.
Six, three, four, four, one. 6, 3, 4, 4, 1. 6, 3, 4, 4, 1. 6, 3, 4, 1.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
And I don't know how anyone could sit there and listen to that over and over without hearing that in their dreams.
And it was traced to a Royal Air Force base in Cyprus, the island of Cyprus, which is right off the coast of Turkey and I think off the coast of Syria. But the British used to have a base there. And it's kind of funny, though. In 2009, all the people of Cyprus woke up towards the end of the crash and found out that the banks had taken half of their money and froze the remainder of their assets and did something called a government buy-in instead of a bailout. And they've never had, really, the people of Cyprus, the same economic independence since. It was an overnight takeover of socialism.
How long did the Lincolnshire Poacher station continue that?
They ended in 2008, which right around the time of the worldwide crash.
Okay.
That's why I say that one. It fulfilled its purpose. And I think Cyprus was sort of the guinea pig for what they want to roll, economically speaking, what they want to roll out for the rest of the world. I think there will be a government buy-in of banks here when the inevitable crash happens. It's coming soon, guys. I'm sorry. And you're going to want to probably buy as much crypto and precious metals as you can.
And lock and load.
Yeah. But you're going to wake up one day, possibly, because they did roll out a lot of legislature after the 2008 crash, because the bailouts guys, they did a terrible job. I don't care what side of the political aisle you fall on, they did a crap job. And they rolled out this legislator saying, well, hey, the American people didn't mind us spending all their taxpayer dollars to fund corporations that cut their jobs and help kill the country. Why don't we try a bail-in next time? They're testing the waters. And so now the laws are in place for it to happen. And if you don't believe me, you can look it up for yourself. They looked at Cyprus and went, well, nobody raised a finger there. Nobody did anything. Let's try it in the rest of the world. So once again, sorry to blackpill everybody.
But you think there's a link, at least, with
I think
these
there was-
weird
yeah.
events, these global events with...
Yeah,
the
because
number
it
stations.
Right.
ended right around the same time of the economic crash. And then, as far as we know, we trace the transmissions to the very place where, at least in the Western hemisphere, Western part of the world, was the very trial ground for what they need to do. Back in the late 90s, obviously governments of the world refused to really speak on these things too much. But representative of the UK, the Department of Trade and Industry, they regulated radio broadcasts at the time. They just said these stations are what you suppose they are. People shouldn't be mystified by them. They are not for, shall we say, public consumption. Now that should bother people.
But that's interesting because I had come across a message that said no government has ever officially admitted or denied using number stations, nor have intelligence agencies.
There's a number of Russian stations.
UVB-76.
That one creeps me out quite a bit if it's the one I'm thinking of, which I'm pretty sure it is. Where isn't that the one with the Russian talking?
It says the buzzer. Let's see.
Oh yes, this is the buzzer. Yeah, this is the crazy noise. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. I always know that one by the buzzer, but I believe there's also a -51,
Okay.
and I get my numbers.
Let's see.
Трианон. 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 7, 7, 2, 3, 0. 1, 9, 6, 0, 1. 5, 7, 3, 7, 8. 1, 9, 6, 5, 5.
Do you notice, though, that all of these make you feel crazy? Like, listening to them, they have, like, that insanity
Yeah.
feel. Like, if you listen to this for more than a few minutes, you'd probably, like, go nuts.
Yeah.
I get a little hair raise on my arm, too, for some reason. I don't know why.
The buzzer is a classic. That's one of the most famous ones. I always just knew that one as the buzzer. You know what? What's a great thing to look for is the Conet Project, CONET, because that'll have a ton of recordings on there, and it gives a little bit more in-depth
On YouTube?
analysis. Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go. Oh, yeah, there's the Swedish Rhapsody.
Yep, I have that queued up. Okay, you know what? I'm starting to freak out. You know why?
Sounds like aliens.
What have I been getting?
Yeah.
I don't even know if Rick knows that.
What's up?
So I've been getting these weird, like just random. I got a random phone call at 11:11, and it had weird sounds like this. They're just weird. Like I called them boops and bops. Remember boops and beeps? And then I was recording a interview in New Hampshire in a truck, nothing on, no cell phones. I had just a handheld recorder, and we were talking about granite state phenomenon. We were talking about UFOs and American Stonehenge and all that. And on the recorder, I got the same boops and beeps, like boop, 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 almost like a transmission was coming through. And then a week later, I get a call with another transmission that comes right through to my voicemail. And as I'm listening to this, I'm kind of like, what in the...
I've gotten that too.
That's so creepy.
Not that part. I haven't
The
gotten
ice
that
cream
part.
man's coming.
I know. Get the quarters, guys. Wow. Yeah, the Swedish Rhapsody is freaky.
Yeah. There's also this one is just labeled the magnetic field. So if you don't mind, I'm just
Go
going
for
to
it.
play it.
Do we know anything about it?
The recording's been taken down. That makes sense.
Son of a bitch.
Let me see if I can find another one of the ones
Okay.
that...
Well, let me just say that the Swedish Rhapsody started broadcasting from Poland in the 1970s, and it features a music box version of the Swedish Rhapsody #1, followed by a female child's voice. Oh, we didn't hear that part. Reciting a list of numbers in German, ending with the word Achtung.
Achtung. So this is the PIP, okay? This is the sister station to the buzzer.
Okay.
So there's a lot of similarities there. Some people think that they complement each other, but this comes from the North Caucasus region as far as they know. So we're talking like Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, the northeast end of Turkey, that sort of region. So I don't know. This one it might have a lot of purpose with what's going on right now. I don't know if people follow world news, but poor Armenia is getting the absolute tar kicked out of it by Georgia. And there's a whole war going on there. Pretty intense. But this is the PIP. This is the sister station to the buzzer.
Okay. So there's never any variations to this?
Some people really dissect these things, right? And they'll even pull out like a metronome and try to count the number of seconds or measures between each beep to see if it changes.
Yeah.
Or see if it increases in the amount per minute.
Does it?
You know?
Do we know?
That right there is what is labeled as its normal operation, which is about 50 beats per minute.
Yeah, it sounds like a heart monitor.
Yeah, but apparently, and I'm just quoting this article here, the times at which the station switches from the day to night frequency or vice versa are changed over the course of the year, presumably to match the changing lengths of day and night. So this one, for all we know, could be tracking the days. I don't know. I thought that was pretty interesting, but apparently with this one, there's not as much variation. But apparently the beeps are sometimes interrupted for the transmission of coded voice messages in Russian, like the Russian word for four, not the number, but like FOR and
Right.
2. And it's just super sort of dense and coded, and they don't really know what the heck that they're talking about. Other messages that have been deciphered are how do you hear, or just over, as in like message received.
Does each country have a number station? Like, does the U.S. have one that we send out a message?
I think
Seems like it.
America has probably control over the most. I would say, along with the UK and Russia. Basically, all the big players in the Cold War seem to have the most number stations. If you want me to go full crazy, I'll tell you right now that because I think it's connected to the number stations is why I bring it up, is that, first of all, when it comes to World War II, guys, I'm sorry, we lost. What happened there was...
We lost?
Yes.
That's a big statement.
No, let's just say that some deals were cut with some of the most famous and wealthy British and American families on the planet. The war was ended. Hitler was killed. All of that. That, to me, I think, obviously took place. You know, it seemed like we won, but I'm talking in terms of what we were fighting for. A war against socialism, heavy nationalism, fascism. We cut deals to keep that in place. And what the Cold War was simply... I mean, because think about it. Think about what freedoms during the Cold War we were willing to do away with. We were willing to be monitored. We were willing to be tracked. You know, we had witch hunts. We turned people in. The Cold War was the installation of socialism around the world. That was almost kind of what we're going through now, but on a softer and more gradual scale. We move forward to today. Think about since we came out of the Cold War, American politics has swung further and further to the left. I always think there should be a balance, right? But all of the aims, supposed aims, that they would come out and say of communism to subvert and take down the West, guys, they all came true. They all came true. How many people out there right now come from broken homes, probably promulgated by atheist families? And listen, believe what you want to believe. I'm not going to try to stop you, but all of the aims came to pass. We now scream and shout for free health care. We now scream and shout to be taken care of. And these number stations, a lot of them were installed during that time. That's why it goes back to what I was saying, is that I think These are ways for them to communicate without actually being seen. It's why governments across the world come down, or at least tried to early on, came down so hard on people trying to monitor them like normal citizens. And we quickly brand anybody who points this stuff out as, as kind of like crazy, like wasting their time, whatever. But let me just pose this question. If these number stations are meaningless and they're just outdated pieces of technology, like somebody forgot to turn the lights off in an old Antarctic base, why haven't we shut them down yet?
Right. That is the weird part of it. That is the weird, strange, almost paranormal part of it.
But I think it's connected to that. And I know your audience might get mad at me. I hope they don't. I'm not trying to upset anybody. It's just looking at this, if we really take a long, hard look at the world, and yes, I'm sure anybody out there who's even slightly interested in conspiracy theories or the paranormal has heard these names. But if you look into Rockefellers and Rothschilds, if you look into especially Bill Gates, I mean, these are people who brazenly talked about the science of eugenics in its heyday. And they talked about socialist idealism. They talked about these things. I think, just me personally, a lot of that stuff was true. And we're in a lockdown now. And it'd be interesting to see during this COVID time what number stations across the world are doing. But as I told Beck, I tried to do some more research before the show, and a lot of my old pages are down. They're gone.
Really weird.
Yeah.
That's all right. We're just going to name this episode Guidestones, Number Stations, and Conspiracy Theories. Oh, my.
Rick's paranoia. But listen, I think these number stations have a part to play. I do. And I think, if anything, anybody out there who's capable of listening to them might want to right now. For all we know, they could definitely be, the remaining ones at least, a clue as to what's going on. I think that there's a lot going on right now, and if I had the technology to listen to them, to monitor them right now, we'd probably be seeing a lot of them changing around their messaging. I don't think they're probably as stable anymore.
Well, here's another one. It's called the Backwards Music Station. Have you heard of this one?
I've heard of it. I don't know if I've heard the message.
Well,
though.
the header says it all. The station is eerily named with just an XM. Sounds like a distorted feedback-driven noise, though an altered voice can sometimes be heard. Sounds like War of the Worlds.
Yeah, it gives me the chills.
Yeah.
That one just sent
Woo.
like shivers down me. Yeah, I didn't like that one.
They're coming to get us. Now, did you know there's a YouTube number station?
No.
It has
I'm not on YouTube that much.
77,000 videos of abstract shapes. And the account name is WebDriver Torso. And he's posted 77,000 videos, each one 11 seconds in length and containing pitch sounds and a blue and red rectangle. One theory is that this message is a spy board, a digital online equivalent of a number station. So here is, let's see if we can get a little.
Oh, that's terrible.
Let me see the. Woo!
That's bad.
You know what that sounds like, though?
Video game?
Well,
Pong?
I guess so. But my uncle growing up, he was a firefighter, and so he had one of those police scanners that was on all the time. So when I would go and spend the night as a kid at my cousin's house, in the middle of the night, that would just, and they kept it in their kitchen, which we would sleep in the living room, which was right off the kitchen. And that noise right before a message would just like cut through the house at like midnight. And you'd be like, what is that? But his kids, they were so used to it, they wouldn't even wake up.
Yeah, sleep right through it.
But yeah.
I'm trying to find this one. Is actually a video that I was watching about a guy who was he was training to be a Navy SEAL, and he said they put them through a test. They have to listen to this insane song for a long time to see if they can tolerate it. They said if they can't make it through this, they can't become a Navy SEAL. And it's an insane sounding song that has terrible pitches in it. Like you hear just like when you're listening to those beeps, it sends a shriek, but it's a real song. I'm going to see if I can find it. So
Okay.
There's also a Yosemite Sam one, apparently. which I just came across when I was doing research for the show. I did find a recording of it here.
So the poem is called the Boots poem. This is the famous Navy SEAL torture simulation, which the way that the cadence and everything about it is so annoying and so bad that it kind of reminds me of these sounds that we've been hearing, but just to show how horrible it is.
We're foot, flogging over Africa. So stand by, day because the company, but night brings long strings of 40,000 million boots, moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. Try to think of something different. Oh, my God, keep
Oh my
me
God.
from going lunatic.
Could you imagine hearing that over and over and over?
Yeah. What also freaks me out is that my grandfather was a Marine, and I wonder what that did with his head before he passed away.
Yeah.
And by the way, I think this is kind of conspiracy, but he met my grandmother at Camp Lejeune. My grandmother was from North Carolina, and that's where Camp Lejeune is. And, you know, they met each other, moved, because my grandfather was from up here. He moved back, and they got, you know, they were married and everything. But he died in a terrible accident about 10 years after he moved up here. So he's been gone a long time. But well after he died, at Camp Lejeune, they found out that they had been... It was basically like the worst underground soil and water poisoning scandal in like Eastern American history. My dad has like a really strange blood protein defect, which we think probably comes from that. You know, everybody there who served there, who even just spent time there, like got cancer and stuff. My grandmother got cancer.
Oh my God.
And passed away in 2004, but it was like simultaneous almost. It was like she, you know, which does happen with some people, but it is kind of crazy. She had this like really pernicious form of, well, it already is pernicious, but like in overdrive form of like lung disease.
Do they know what the poison was?
It was all sorts of things. I wish I thought of looking up the Camp Lejeune, because it has been a couple years, guys, since I read about it. Basically, the government denied it for years, and Camp Lejeune was started many decades ago, you know, I think around the time of World War II, and it wasn't until the 90s that they finally admitted it and also stopped poisoning their Marines. But there was a lot of it was waste runoff. My grandmother officially lived in Kinston, which wasn't that far away. But that whole area, especially back then, was very rural. They were surrounded by farms. So I'm guessing a lot of it was like, you know, DDT and other pesticide runoff going into their water cisterns. But a lot of it was put there by the government itself. When they tried to blame other factors, they literally couldn't find and compel enough evidence. They're still fighting lawsuits in court. There are people who can't walk, people that have crazy, all sorts of diseases. So I don't know. Sorry, Steph. It's just talking about all this conspiracy stuff, and then talking about that Marines thing. It's like, man, what did they not do to my grandfather?
It seems all institutions that they try to hide so much stuff to maintain their image or whatever they're trying to create. You get religious groups that hide all their abuses.
But
Governments do the same thing.
But
It's
also, I was thinking, going back to the number stations thing, you know, my other grandfather, your dad, was monitoring communications during the Korean War in Greenland, which I wonder how many of those he was listening to.
Yeah, I don't know. He's never really talked about it too much. I know that he used to do radar stuff, but he said they'd see some weird stuff on monitors, you know, when they could see what was going on. I don't know. He said there was at one point they were tracking two things coming in on radar that literally were at such a high rate of speed. He says, and it looked like they were going to collide, and then they stopped before they collide and then separated and went the other way. He goes, at a very high rate of speed.
Oh, clearly UFO.
Yes. I mean,
That's crazy.
yeah, it is. It
Man.
is.
I don't know what I would do if I saw that
Witnessed
myself.
that, yeah.
I think everybody should during the summertime, go out in the middle of nowhere where there's no lights.
Well, he was in Greenland,
At
so
night.
that's like
Yeah, exactly.
the stars must look like diamonds. You know, I mean, they must look
Yeah.
amazing.
You'll always see though like irregular movement. You will, like, every time I used to go out all the time in the woods and just sleep out there, camp out there, whatever. And on a good night, just looking up, you'd see all sorts of weird stuff. Some of it can be explained by science, but then there are things where it's like, that's not a satellite. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
That's not something bouncing off of our atmosphere.
You're absolutely right.
I think
I've seen that stuff too.
Yeah.
Things that it's not a satellite. It's switched its trajectory. That satellites just don't do that.
yeah.
There's blinks that are happening between, it looks like stars, almost like a communication that's happening. But it's not just an atmospheric overlay. I mean, this is literal signals from one star to another. And then
Yeah.
that star may move in the sky. It's very odd.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I sit talking about that again. I want it to be summer again so I can go out and do that.
I don't know. Winter has some good stuff if you can stand the cold.
Yeah.
I mean, the skies are usually clear on the icy cold nights.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And occasionally, for all of our listeners that don't live here, I mean, it's very, very rare. But if our winters get bad enough, we sometimes get the northern lights here.
Yeah.
Even talking to people too that just live like maybe in South Carolina or something, not that far away, just like trying to tell them like, yeah, it gets dark here at like 4,
Yeah.
3:30.
Yeah.
They're like, no.
Oh, it feels like Alaska,
No
guys.
way. Yeah. It's like, no, we get about at the height of winter, we get like 6 hours of sunlight. That's about it.
It's depressing too. Like I get up in the morning to go to work and it's pitch black, and I go home and it's pitch black.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa. I'm like, I haven't seen any daylight today.
No.
Yeah, I've gone entire winters not seeing the sun just because of my work schedule, and then also my sleep schedule on my days off, like just seeing darkness.
That's why I have a sad light in this
Yeah,
here studio.
those are very important to have.
The people are like, what are you doing with that light exactly in here? Surgery? I'm like, no, making myself happy and feel like I'm under the sun.
We're like a lizard in a cage. We need that UV lamp from time to
Going
time.
back to number station, do you think at all, because of those sounds are so horrible sounding, it's just to irritate people? Do you think it's like a subliminal irritation device that but we're not maybe hearing with our ears, but maybe it's somehow it's
Who's
affecting us?
running them for 50 years, Steph?
I know, it's just,
Who is in
100
charge
years.
of running them? That's
Yeah.
the question.
oh, I know.
Yeah.
But it is very mysterious. The guide stones are even as mysterious as that. That's pretty damn
No,
mysterious.
the guide stones are like a hammer over the face. Like, know what they're saying.
Yeah.
Yes, you can read into it a little bit and maybe decipher some more. But when someone builds a Stonehenge copy that is like directly facing the sun, is on a ley line, and is telling all but 500,000 people of the world to kill themselves, that's pretty evil. These things, on the other hand, they seem to have relation to worldly events. Some of them, like that Yosemite Sam one, I think might have a really sick meaning. I mean,
You
uses
just gave me chills. What do you mean? Elaborate on that one.
He's talking about, I'm gonna blow y'all to smithereens.
Oh.
It's some of them are, and I'm sure there's tons of them are decoys too, right? To keep people wrapped up in them.
Yeah.
People have to trust their gut more. I think in today's world, we've had our own instincts beaten out of us, and we've replaced them with the reason of other people. And when you listen to that, and like you just said, like you got chills back, listen to that, because that's probably the right way to feel. Don't hold off on that and wait until some person who society says knows more about it than you will explain to you that it's this, that, or the other thing. It's like, I don't know this person, and I don't know what their gains are. But what got humanity, through the first 1,000,000 years of existence was trusting their gut,
Yeah.
not listening to other people who might not have your best interests at heart. So if you can get anything away from all of the black pilling I've done throughout this podcast, that's what I want to say. Listen to your gut, okay?
So if any of you, Beck and Rick, would come up with your own noise for a number station, what would you do? Come up with I would come up with one. It would be like Bush Senior saying, "Not gonna do it, not gonna do it."
Wouldn't be
No,
prudent.
wouldn't be prudent. No new taxes.
Mine would probably be, I don't have an eloquent enough voice, but somebody reading very calmly and carefully the lyrics to Bastards of Young, just repeating it over and over again.
I think I would just go with something that's already made, like number 9, number 9,
There you go.
number 9.
Oh my God, I could see that, like, just setting people on fire. Hey, you know what? By the way, speaking of the Beatles song, I always wondered, maybe they were listening to number stations.
They probably were. Well, listeners, we want to thank you for your listenership. We have grown exponentially, and we would love for you to reach out to us. Shoot us an email at tothespiritpod@gmail.com. Leave us a review. Rate us.
I just want to say thanks to, apparently, from what Beck and Steph have said, all the nice things people have said about me. I hope I haven't ticked a few of you off in this episode, but thank you.
We welcome different opinions. We like to hear all sides of the story to put our own puzzle pieces together to form our own opinions like intelligent people. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And until next time, I'm Beck.
And I'm Steph.
And if you want nightmares, tune into your local number station.
To the Spirit
Podcast.
Supernatural Science
Aliens. Ghost.
Psychic Mystic
Spirits.
Divine Source
Heaven.
The Dead. It's magic.